traffic or something, I don't know. He's in house and then he's gonna retire.
Easing into it.
He's easing into it about 6 months early, yeah. First of all, I'd like to introduce James Martin, Assistant Administrator for Eldridge.
Yes.
He's in the back, welcome.
Yep, thank you.
I wanted to bring him down to introduce him to the commission so we can have a flavor for what the commission does and everybody else is on board. Thank you.
Okay, first item on the agenda, approval of the June 22nd, 2011 minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the June.
Second.
Motion second, questions? All in favor, signify by saying
Aye.
Carried. Treasurer's report, Carol.
Balance of June 1st, 2011, $731,705.63. Deposits in June, $647,744.07. Withdrawals in June, $804,400.68. Balance as of June 30th, 2011, $575,049.02. I move the report be accepted as written in May.
Second. Motion second, question on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Finance Personnel Committee, Dr. Austin.
On the addendum to the agenda, you have bills for the month totaling $68,181.26. I would move their approval.
Second. Motion second, question? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
At the end of June, 100% through the fiscal year, we've expended 92 9/10% of the budget, so we're in line there, and what the auditors have their way with it.
Okay, next item on the agenda, consideration of following contracts. Denise?
There are actually 3 contracts for your consideration. There are 2 on the agenda, and then another one on the bottom of your addenda. The first one is a contract with the Alcoa Foundation for air quality and public awareness and education for up to $70,000. That project would begin on September 1st of this year and be completed by December 31st of 2012.
Move its approval.
Second. Motion second, question on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
And the next one is with the Illinois Department of Transportation. It's for additional transportation planning efforts. The amount is for $4,696, and this will require match from your existing dues that you fund by state with for $10,924, and that project will begin July 1st of 2011 and be completed by June 30, 2012.
That's 43,000, correct?
Yes, 43,000 of federal and state dollars, and you would be matching it with your existing dues of $10,924.
This is not bad either, I thought you said 4,000.
Oh, I apologize, I didn't have.
Okay.
Yes.
Move its approval.
Second.
Motion second, question on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
And the last one, again, is at the bottom of your addendum. It's a contract with the Interstate RC&D that serves the same 5-county area that Bi-State Regional Commission serves. It's to provide, they have transitioned from having a director through funding of the federal government, and in this interim period, they've asked to contract with us similar to the way we contract, for instance, with Scott County Housing Council for some accounting services to help them bring their books in line. So this is an actual cost project where we will be paid per hour for the time that we put in. The project would begin July 27th, 2011, and our fiscal staff believe they can complete reviewing their books for them by September 30, 2011.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, question on the motion?
They are still in business, Denise, RCMD is.
They still have grants that actually they
Oh, I
must
see.
close out, and those grants are actually continuing through this calendar year, and they have their books and they have bills that are coming in, and they need some accounting assistance.
Because I know our board member has dropped off.
That's correct, and
So-
many other counties.
Okay.
Yes.
Mercer County has too.
Right,
Yes,
right.
So it's Muscatine County.
Right, we're aware of
Right.
that, and that's why before we provided our services, even though we will be paid for anything we provide, we wanted you to be aware that we would be doing this.
Do they still have staff in-house at all?
No, all the work that's being done is actually being done, by Jim King, a prior Henry County board member, through volunteer effort, and so he needs some professional accounting assistance.
What's the RC&D stand for?
Resource Conservation and Development Service, and was formed by the federal government. It was basically defunded, very recently. And, some of the organizations are run not by volunteer boards, unpaid boards. And some of those boards have determined that because of other activities and grants that they're administering, that they need to continue on in existence, even though they don't have actual formal staff, at least until those contracts and grants are formally completed. And some of those impact some of you even. Some of our counties have a forced grant, getting rid of dead trees to reduce fire hazards, and I think Black Hawk Historic Site has some of those activities going on right now. So they're trying to close out all their past obligations.
So we'd lose that money if we didn't have you
Well,
finishing that out?
You might lose the remaining money, but
Yeah.
some of the project has already begun. And so there are costs and invoices coming in as we speak. And there's the federal money that can go to pay for it, but there needs to be someone who's handling that federal money.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, next item, we have
I-
the budget.
did we-
did we
not
vote?
The motion is second.
Oh, I'm correct.
No problem.
Did we get a motion?
Yep.
Yes, you can.
Any question on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Okay, item number 5, census information update.
Mayor, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks, Lisa.
How's everyone else?
Everyone
I know
else
you're
is
supposed
very-
to start a presentation with a joke, but I could not think of anything funny about census data, so I'm sorry about that. It's gonna be a little bit serious, I hope I don't bore you to death, and you may, trip over this board back here. Sorry. But what I'm gonna do today is update you on some of the new census data that's coming out from the 2010 census. What I'm gonna do first though is update you on what's come out already. As you know, late last year, counts were delivered for each state to the president. Those counts were, used in the reapportionment process, so we took care of how many congressional senators were House of Representative, members we had. That happened in December of this year. What happened is both Illinois and Iowa lost one representative in the House of Representatives. Earlier this year, February through April, redistricting data was released, and that data was used for the redistricting process to draw those lines for the congressional legislative boundaries. Both Illinois and Iowa now have accepted their plans. Those were done, in April for Iowa and then June for Illinois. So we now have new congressional districts. I did not print out maps for you for those. If you need the maps for those new districts, we have those in our office. For Illinois, there's just a couple of changes. Iowa changed a lot. There's a lot of different maps for that, so we have those if you need to look at them if you haven't already. Davenport. The first program is called the Count Question Resolution Program, or the CQR. That's a program to challenge your count. What you need to do is go in and look at the very detailed census data, the population and the housing units. We can help you do that look. There's three things you can look at. You can check the boundary for what the census had on file for you at the time the census was taken. You can look at how the housing units and population were placed. So whether they were placed within your city, out of your city, within a census tract, out of a census tract. We can help you look at those maps and look at that information. The other one is whether the houses were counted correctly. Were there duplicates, were some left off erroneously, things like that. So it's very detailed work. We can help you through that. There's been 4 communities that I know of that have been interested in that process. One for sure is going to go through with that. That program started June 1st of this year. It runs for 2 years through June 1st of 2013. The request does have to come from the highest elected official in a community or the highest appointed official. And there is no cost for the program other than your own time and your staff time to perform that work. So you just perform the work, provide the correct documentation, and make the request. Now, should you find a correction need to be made, and that goes through the census process, they will not change the 2010 count, but they will issue a corrected count. What they do is they issue an errata. You can use those corrected counts for any official census data that's needed, but the 2010 count still sticks. If you go look up a 2010 count, that'll be in there on their website, but you do have that other data you can use for some of your funding purposes. Okay? The other program that's available through the census that might change your census number is called a special census. This program is available in between the 10-year censuses. What it is a total recount of your town or village. It's a new census. They go out with new surveys, new enumerators, and recount your whole town. There is a cost to this program. It's basically like redoing the whole census. So the cost is based on what your projected increase is in population. And since you don't know that, they do the cost as kind of an estimate. So to give you an example, between the last 2 censuses, the city of Eldridge, between 2000 and 2010, in 2004 they held a special census. They gained 648 persons through that special census process. The cost to the city was $77,000. However, they felt that they estimated that they recouped that $77,000 within 2 years from their increased road use taxes and other funding that they got from the government. Okay, now that program officially begins a year after the census. I checked their website today and it says it's still on hiatus since the 2010 census. We expect that program to continue. I haven't heard anything that it's not going to be, possible to do that. Again, by state's rule, we'll help you guys out with those if you need help. So let us know. Moving on. 2 other key sets of data that are going to come out soon. Not so much data, well, there will be data associated with these, but the Census Bureau delineates an urban and rural piece of the census. So urban and rural is based on population density. What they do is they delineate an urbanized area. The urbanized area is important because the urbanized area determines whether there's an MPO, like by state, located in an area. It also, the urbanized areas are important to the how surface transportation funds are allocated based on census data. Okay, so, metropolitan statistical area, we of course have 4 counties in ours now. Mercer County was added after the 2000 census in 2003. We don't know what's gonna happen after this one. You know, it's based on commuting patterns. And so we'll see what happens. The last part of this presentation, I wanna go over the difference between 2 of the census programs, the decennial census and the American Community Survey. First, to make it clear, the decennial census happens every 10 years, hence decennial. It's a 100% count of the population. This year, the decennial census, the only form that was used was a short 10-question form called the short form. And the data from that product is released on a continual flow basis, like I just told you about all those data sets coming out. The American Community Survey, on the other hand, the American Community Survey is the long form of the census, so that's the more detailed questions that are asked. It's done on a continual basis now throughout those 10 years. It's a random survey that's done. 3 million homes are surveyed every year with the American Community Survey. 3 million homes are sampled. What happens is communities that are 65,000 and people and over are surveyed every year. This is a little bit confusing, so I want to keep it straight my thought. Communities 20,000 and above are surveyed on a continual basis every 3 years. All communities are surveyed over a period of 5 years. Now, when you pass that over a time frame of 5 years, we start to get data every year, new data every year for all of these communities. So again, this is the more detailed data that's coming out. It used to be every 10 years, now we get every year with the American Community Survey. It's a good thing. There's growing pains with it, but it's a good thing to have this data more frequent now.
Is that survey voluntary on behalf of the people who get it, or is it they track you down?
It's just like the census. I mean, just like the decennial census. I looked it up. There's no laws or fines that you don't fill it out, but I mean, it's on an important basis.
They come knock on your door if they don't get it back.
Yeah.
They know who got it. And
Do they actually knock on the door if they didn't get it back though?
I think they do follow up, you know, maybe phone calls and things. They don't put
Yeah.
as much effort as a decennial where they want the 100% count.
And
Because
so
it is a sample survey.
one of the reasons why I asked Lisa to clarify this is because, many of you, you get block grants for water or sewer. They're called CDBGs in Iowa and CDAPs in Illinois. Well, you need low to moderate income information. And one of the only ways we can get some of that information that HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, goes by its federal grant, is by people answering these questionnaires. And I've been at city council or village board meetings where someone in the audience or one of the board members or council members has said, oh, I received those questions, and I wondered why I was getting those personal questions at home, and I just threw it away. Well, what it was a census product, and that means that we won't have the data that they might need to get some federal grants. So it's kind of problematic because the general public doesn't understand that this is the census's new long form. And it doesn't roll out like the big 10-year census where you all go out in public in the media and write in the paper, hey, please everyone, send in your census because we certainly want to be correctly counted. Then this other information comes out and no one recognizes it as actually another piece of the census that comes out with different timing. So it is a concern.
Yeah, the Census Bureau is enabled by law to do the American Community Survey, just like they were the long form for the census. Like I said, you are not obligated by law to fill it out. However, it's important that you do. The information filled out is completely confidential. Census workers are sworn for life to keep that confidential. I think there's a $2,500 fine, should they reduce that
question, just generally, thanks, that's a very good report, I guess. You see any trends developing, anything that we should, as planning people, be really concerned about in the census data we should have here? Anything, what are they saying nationally,
Numbers are
locally?
pretty flat, you know, at least for us. I think from this map, and they make note of it on the side over here, the center of population moving, with the population moving south, and it's moving to the south, you know, there's a lot of increased population in the Atlanta area, the Carolinas and that, and of course, down in the Sun Belt. So population-wise, it's moving south. I don't know, maybe we're all getting older and can't stand the cold anymore. So.
In the Midwest, as most of you know, it is flattening out, so that's the one thing that we notice, and obviously, and you've all heard also that, the average age is increasing, in the Midwest. So those two things seem to be two things that are pretty much, pretty well known and driven, but any other data we don't really have, and especially because of the American Community Survey just rolling out, information like how many homes are sewer and water, because that's a question they ask. Do you actually have plumbing to your house? That's a question on the census, has been for many, many years. But we don't have the answer to that question yet, because the American Community Survey is still just rolling out. So some of that more interesting data that might show some trends of improvements maybe in the United States, we don't really have all of that data yet to be able to react to that.
Yeah, for the first time, the American Community Survey in 2005 was the first year that all communities were surveyed, based on that schedule, based on the size of the community versus the time frame. So 2005 was the first time that all communities were surveyed, so 5 years later, 2010 was the first year that we were able to get, the full, data for all communities. So, later this year, we'll actually be getting, the 1-year estimates for the larger communities. The 3-year estimates will be a 2008 through 10 data set. The 5-year estimates for all communities will be a 2006 through 10 data set. And it makes it really difficult to pick which data sets to use, because we have, for some communities, 3 or even 4, because we have the decennial data to look at as well.
And
Lots of data to look at.
And there actually have been questions about that. Both are authentic census
Yeah.
pieces of data, but we actually have been questioned as to why we would use the decennial census versus the American Community Survey census for, let's say, a population figure. And so we typically try to use whatever is most appropriate for the project being completed. If we're using other data sets that are something other than a decennial census figure, then we'll probably use American Community Survey because we need the most recent. But if we're using decennial census for one very important piece of data in a project, then we'll probably try to stick to decennial census for every piece of data for that project. And we've been questioned on that before, from folks, why'd you choose it? And actually, if you call the Census Bureau and you ask, which should I use, they won't tell you which to use. They won't tell you which is better or worse.
It just depends on the application you use for it, obviously, some of it we can't get out of the decennial census because there were only 10 questions on it. There's lots of data available, but we saw from this list, lots more in the American Community Survey. So it depends on what the project is and what we're gonna use it for. One thing we do try to do is be consistent with our data, not mixed data sets. You can compare the decennial census with the American Community Survey, but it gets a little heavy when you do that, so.
Lee, your question?
Well, I have a problem maybe, I guess. I look at the long form and I wouldn't get excited about filling that out. So now how do we get our low income people, which are far more important to fill it out than anybody else? Because that's where we get the grants for and those people. Do we work with the people who work with our low income people? The DHS is the community service people, to say every so often, did you ever get one of these?
Yeah.
A blank copy, because those are the people I think that is more important we get to fill out than copy myself.
That's a good idea. I think all of those organizations, and probably the directors of most of those organizations totally understand where the data comes from and have heard of the American Community Survey. But to maybe have some information on display at all those offices, just so they ask me about the American Community Survey. It's as important as the census. You know, maybe some sort of, you know, poster in everyone's offices. I know, Cass, you were, you know, with that population. Yeah, so maybe we should be doing that.
Well, do we know when those are going out?
Well, they're totally random. They're done on a continuous basis. 3 million homes are surveyed, or 3 million housing units, or group orders, or whatever, are surveyed every year.
It's
Now,
always April or?
No, it's on a continual basis. I think they do have a little bit of a time frame, you know, like they go out in the fall or whatever. So, there are sample American Community Survey forms on the website. If anyone needs one of those, I can print that out for you. So if you wanna put it in your organization, or, you know, send it out or talk to anyone about it, those are available. It is several pages long, so.
Do we get a failure rate, like, against that? Because, you know, they sent so many to
Right.
King County and we got 1% back, or?
I don't know if they do that for the American Community Survey. They do definitely for the decennial
Yeah,
census.
right.
They were really big on that. I can look into that and see
Yeah.
if they do.
Yeah, we can find
One
out.
thing with the American Community Survey, it's important to notice, they do publish those numbers with a margin of error. Because it's a random sample survey, there's a margin of error with those numbers.
We can check on some of those questions for you, because some of those things are new, because this, again, is just a relatively brand new process. Again, its first outlay came out in 2010, so we can definitely check into that and get back with you. And maybe we could even develop some sort of, poster-like thing that would be PDF to you, and you could print it out whatever size you wanted and in color if you wanted, and in your organizations, and push it out to whoever wants it, and they could do it and put it up in their offices, and just maybe start making people aware, and have people ask questions, and just have it up in places so that people think. We should probably even have something up and ask us about the American Community Survey, because most don't.
Most important thing is, what does it look like? You know,
Yeah.
what does it
Yeah.
look like? Because, I mean, there are things I look at and don't open because I know what it is.
That's true. That's true too.
If I knew what it looked
Well, just
like,
like, yeah.
you know, just to show a picture, this is what this is, you know, open it to find out, as opposed to just.
That's a good idea. We can probably find out all of that information.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, the people that are putting out the grant applications, it would really behoove them to specify on their grant applications as to which one they want their numbers from.
And sometimes they do. Sometimes someone will say, we want a
Right.
decennial census figure.
Right.
Not very often though.
Usually they just say.
They census population, and when they say those words, then it's all
And
it's all
usually
out.
with that, we'll wanna go, if it's just a straight population or a housing unit or base, whatever, we'll go with the decennial census because that's a more complete count. It's 100% count. The ACS is a random survey, it's not a complete count. So we'll go with decennial census. If it's a piece of data that's, you know, like Denise said, plumbing, whatever that is, some of the income data comes out of the American Community Survey, we'll have to go with that, so.
Well,
it just depends.
we'll get additional information, we'll get it to you, maybe we can have Lisa come back in a couple months and also get, some information pushed out by email to you.
And also, Lisa, one question, John. I know you've been helping with the city, with our staff on redistricting, and based on the population. It brings up some interesting questions for at least Illinois, and that's, what do you do with when you're redistricting your council members going to a different district? How's that handled, and what happens? Are they, they have to run again?
We tried
Two-year,
to find,
four-year term?
Judith and I worked on that, we tried to find some information. The best we can find is that they are representing those people through their term, no matter when their term lasts. So whoever's been elected represents those people in their existing district until their term. When their term ends, whenever the next election is, then those new wards and precincts go into effect for that next election. So even though we're doing 3 new wards and new precincts now for you, they don't go into effect until after that term expires, because aren't they on a revolving term in your city?
Yes, two-year, four-year terms. I got 2 council members
So
that's
it
gonna
gets
be
a little heavy.
completely out of their ward on 4-year terms, so that's in 2015. And 2013 we have elections, so.
Yeah, I
I'm not gonna have 10 council members, I can't even handle 8.
I thought I was the only one feeling that way.
Illinois gives you no information to go by. Sorry, don't wanna do the little.
Yeah, that's one of the issues that's gonna be coming up for probably municipalities, if they're gonna redistrict and get things more equal, is what do you do with council members?
We've helped a handful of communities with their re-precincting and redistricting matters. Anything else?
Maybe I'll have some information on them, by the next time you're here.
Well, we keep trying to find some, a lot of it isn't just obviously available, it's really been kind of difficult.
By design.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. You gotta hire somebody at $300 an hour to tell you what it's saying.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the Rock Island Arsenal. Jim Morgan, Jim, you have the floor. Tell us what's going on.
Hey, I'm Jim Morgan. I'm with Rock Island Arsenal Development Group. For some of you who don't know, we're a nonprofit on the island. We do economic development work. We renovate underutilized facilities, manage the property, try to find tenants, and so forth. So, I'm gonna try to give you a little flavor of what's going on the island, what's happened since RAC 2005. I tend to talk in language that's foreign to a lot of people, so there's an acronym lesson you have in front of you, I think, that will tell you some things if I forget to say what that is. So let me start with kind of, that was good. There we go. Kind of an outline of what I'll talk about RAC 2005, what happened and where we're at with that, and some of the legislative issues we have today, and future concerns. General Dunwoody is the 4-star commander of the Army Material Command, and she is the big boss of just about everybody on the island. Not quite everybody, but most everybody on the island. And there have been some meetings with the congressional delegation from Iowa and Illinois I've had with her. And then there is an August staff meeting of the staffers that handle the military affairs for our congressional delegation that come usually once in the summer recess during August, and they're coming again this August. You remember the BRAC process is basically has to be legislation that allows the BRAC process. That's because if you try to close any facility, that congressman would and should say, not in my district, somebody else's. And so the process basically is you go through, the Secretary of Defense makes some recommendations. A commission is appointed to look at this. They go through the process of having hearings and so forth, and then they come to a decision. It goes to Congress, and Congress votes on it up or down. No amendments. Can't say, hey, I don't like this, but I like this. It's up or down. Then it goes to the President of the United States, and he either signs it or does not sign it. If he signs it, it becomes law. And so you have to have things done within a certain time period. RAC 2005 basically said everything had to be done and in place. People moved, facilities built by September 15th, 2011. Okay, so that's coming pretty fast. If you look at the moves, we had Defense, Finance, and Accounting Center that lost about 350 people. They left early in the springtime of 2008. The installation management activity, Northwest Region, and Netcom, which is a communications group that was with them, left in 2007. They had about 105 people. Tacom Rock Island is about 1,100 people, and they're still in the process of moving. There's about 450 people that are still located on the island that are part of the Tacom move, that have not moved or other jobs, retired or whatever. And if you look at the numbers in total, back when RAC 2005 was done, there were about 6,600 people on the island. And if you look at the in versus the out, it's a lot more people out. Well, today, there are about 8,400 people on the island. So other organizations have grown in spite of what RAC has done. First Army has come in. Initially, they said it'd be 250 plus people. I've seen numbers as high as 600, 300 military, 300 civilian. they've really got just slightly less than 200 people on the island right now, and they stood up this last week. And so most of the people here, not all of them. Riverbank Army Ammunition Plant in Riverbank, California, close to Modesto, was a government-owned, contractor-operated metal parts manufacturing facility. And it was closed, and it was moved to the island, and they spent about $20 million renovating some facilities over there. And they moved in, and they have about 45 people. We don't have all of them hired yet, but we'll have them sometime in the future. We normally, each year, the community goes and says, okay, we have some earmarks that we would like done and some legislation that we would like done. Earmarks for 2011, 2012 were not available. Congress has decided they're not gonna do that thing anymore, and so earmarks have kind of gone by the wayside. There are some other things that they can do. They call them plus-ups, where you've actually got an account already in the budget, and you can plus that up, but you can't specify who it's for or how it's gonna be done. So again, you may plus up an account, who you plussed it up for may not get anything at all out of it. So it's a different process for that. There was some legislation that the community asked for. Arsenal Support Program Initiative is what lets us do the work that we do on the island. It also allows the factory to do public-private partnerships, where they can partner with an organization, commercial entity, bring them on the island, and do some work for them. We have legislation that expires the end of September 2012, so we asked for permanent legislation for that. For a number of reasons, that's not gonna happen. There's some other things going on that will probably let us continue operating our piece of it. And then 4544, 10 U.S. Code 4544 is the joint manufacturing facility, which allows them to partner with industry. In the past, they've used ASPE legislation. In the future, they're probably going to do this. The problem that they've had is that it was a process that was not easy to use. They had 8 of these partnerships that they could do within the Army, and the Army seemed to never know exactly how many they had at any one time. So you'd spend a couple years courting some industry partner of doing this partnership to get down to the point where you want to put the proposal together, and you go up and say, Mother, may I? And Mother would say, no, you're not going to do this. Well, that just destroys everything. So they used ASPE legislation. So the House has put in some legislation that basically says, take out the cap, and then they also had, which was 8, and then they also had some language that says it stops in 2014, and you want some things to go down the line. The Senate has a different version, and it doesn't do as much, and so the Senate hasn't passed theirs yet, where the House has, so it's not in conference yet. So one of these days, Congress ever gets past the debt issues, maybe they'll take care of some of these matters, and hopefully they'll resolve this to the benefit of the local community. JMTC has workload issues. I think most of us know that the war's winding down and some other things, the budget's not there. They're not workloaded. They basically have to go out and find workload. And so we talked about some legislation for that, find out a reasonable way to do that. Depots get 50% of all the depot workload that's out there when you come back and repair equipment. 50% of it has to be in the organic base. It has to be in the Army's depots. 50%, not any more than 50%, can be out in the commercial world. There isn't anything like that with the arsenals. And so we've looked at some legislation. There is an Arsenal Act that basically says Secretary of the Army shall utilize arsenals, but there's no teeth in that. And so we've been working with a congressional delegation to try to come up and do some things with that. I think future concerns, everybody knows, the country's got money problems. The war's winding down. This is a defense organization. The Army's living off of supplemental funds. And by that I mean there's a defense budget, and then if you read the newspapers and listen to the TV and so forth, there usually is somebody comes up during the year and says, we can't operate in what we've got in our budget. It was proposed 2 years ago, and we've got things going on now, so there's a supplemental budget. There's a lot of work that's done over on the island that's based upon supplemental dollars. And as the war winds down and as some other things happen with the economy, supplemental budgets aren't gonna be around. And so the Army has to figure out how to meld that together. So there's concern about that. The Army's been told to reduce the budget. If you've heard stuff or newspapers or seen it on TV about the $3 billion that Army Materials Command is supposed to find, and the fact that some people have said that Joint Manufacturing Technology Center may be closed as a result of that and so forth. Again, a lot of things going on. First of all, the way that the factory is run, you wouldn't save any money because they don't get any appropriated dollars at all to operate. It's a revolving fund, so you don't save any money doing that. But again, people have ideas and people have rumors that get started, and next thing you know, it's fact. In BRAC 2005, again, future concern, they have a schedule calling for BRAC 2015. And so even though today there is no legislation that would allow BRAC to happen, Congress would have to pass some legislation that allows it to happen. There still is a schedule out there, and there still is some thought that there will be a BRAC 2015. And if that's the case, then again, I think everybody in the community ought to be concerned, make sure that we do the things that we need to ahead of time to make sure that doesn't come about to affect the organization here. We become a gainer instead of a loser. As I said, General Dunwoody is the four-star commander, Army Material Commander. There have been several meetings with her and her predecessors by our congressional delegation in the past, and most recently within the last month. A lot of things that they have talked about. Again, rumors of closing JMTC, and what she says, she knows of no decision to do that. Well, they're still doing studies. And so she could say there's nothing that I know of that would close it. That doesn't give me much satisfaction that that's a final decision. So I think there's concern about that. And the congressional delegation has made it clear to her that is of importance to the community. Army Sustainment Command, again, last year about 85% of their money was supplemental dollars. The Army no longer has supplemental dollars, and the question gets to be is, even though they got increased missions and they've grown significantly, how do you pay for that? Contracting Command, it's about 400 people on the island. It's grown significantly. It's probably one of the best within the Army, and yet they're moving some organizations within the Army level to Huntsville. They don't have facilities for that. Where TACOM is leaving, we have bridge facilities. It's probably $28 million that's in the budget next year for facilities in Huntsville. So the delegation has been pushing hard. Army, why don't you make a decent decision on this and bring some of that, not all of that, to Rock Island. Joint Munitions Command, they're again another command that's on the island, about 700 people, 800 people. They work closely with Picatinny Arsenal in Dover, New Jersey. And there's concern that we've had in the community for a number of years of duplication of efforts, things that seem to migrate east and they have to stay here. Some of the R&D is done out there, but the logistics, the contracting is basically done here. And so there's been kind of a mark on the wall to each of these commanders that we've talked to, that the delegation has talked to, that we're watching this, you need to keep what's here, here. And so those have been basically the four issues that the delegation has been involved in. On the 11th and the 12th of August, the congressional delegation staffers, these are usually the people that are the legislative directors or handle military affairs for the delegation, and we basically do the 4 senators, we do 3 congressmen. We do Congressman Losack in Iowa, as well as Braley, because some of the people on the island work for him, and it looks like his district may change, or the districts change and may be here. He's also on the Armed Services Committee, which Bobby Schilling is now too. So we've got 2 people on the Armed Services Committee, which we never had before. So their staff is coming in. Some of these are young kids that get their feet wet and so forth, and they rotate, although a couple of them have been around for 10 or 12 years. But I think of the 8 coming from Washington, 5 have never been here before. It's important that they see firsthand where this is, what the facility is, talk to the people that they're trying to help when things, come up their way. So they're gonna tour the factory on Thursday and then all day Friday they'll be around. And I think that concludes what I have. Any questions?
I've got a question. What are you going to do to orient these five, I'll say younger people or people who haven't had the experience to what happens in cities and particularly the arsenal? How do you go about welcoming them, making sure they know what's going on?
Most of them, have had some discussions and on a quarterly basis, we usually try, the mayors, the elected officials have gone into Washington on a quarterly basis and sit down and talk to them. They've hired lobbyists also that does some work that works with them. I correspond with them almost every day, some of them, trying to get them to understand why this is important, why we're asking for this, how this interacts with what we're doing. But the real purpose to bring them here is to see firsthand, meet the people that they're trying to help, and get a flavor for the community as well.
On that last point, I did go through with a Davenport Rotary Club about a 2-hour review, and before I went in, I really didn't have too much of an idea until I went here. And then after I was there, I was absolutely amazed at the intellectual knowledge, the capability of technology, and the fact that the manufacturing facility produces things that can't be reproduced anyplace else. And I would hope that that kind of education would be what these people would live with.
They're gonna see that, and then all day Friday, they're gonna talk to the Joint Munitions Command, the Army Sustainment Command, First Army, other entities that are on the island to see what they do and how they do it.
And we walked, that was a long walk.
Well, they have parts. More people like me, they have parts.
Jim, for sort of benefit of all of us, which facilities are the biggest threat to the down Arsenal's future? Is that, you know, Huntsville, Moore, Michigan, New Jersey, and if so, why? And why would they wanna mess with the joint manufacturing facility if they don't really cost the government? And where would that theoretically go?
If you listen to some people, let me address and go back, answer your question first, is two places I think we need to be concerned about are Huntsville, and we need to be concerned about Dover, New Jersey.
Which one?
Dover, New Jersey. The ammunition community is basically headquartered in Dover, New Jersey, even though almost all the logistics and a lot of the procurement is done here. And having worked in that business for a long time, I've seen the pattern of just chipping away at stuff, and the next thing you know, then they come back and say, well, you don't have any capability anyway, and we've got it all here, so let's just move it all here. So there's a concern of that. Huntsville, from the standpoint, if you can go back to, 4-star general at AMC 15 years ago had what he called Vision 2000, and it was probably 96 or something like that, 15 years ago. He basically said, let's move everything to Huntsville, all of Army material. And you've seen pieces of it happen with headquarters moving from Washington to Huntsville and some other things. I still say, with the synergy that they have and with what power they have, lots of retired generals in that area, that is a concern, I think, of all of us. That's still a plan that people may want to try to pursue. The factory is the kingpin, in my estimation anyway, of all these decisions. Back 2005, I think some of you know, when whole island was on the list. And through some political maneuvering got it off of that. But it was all because the factory could be closed, there was nothing unique in it. If the factory can close, you can move everybody else by moving a desk and a computer and finding people. You can't move the factory. What some people say, and I disagree with, is that the factory can be duplicated by all the depots. That is not true, but that's what some people believe. And so you could close the arsenals, have the depots do all that work, and you wouldn't miss a heartbeat. Well, you would. but that is the feeling by some people. So that's what we need to find also. Again, the community started a nonprofit called Quad City Manufacturing Laboratory, and it's on the island, and it was to do exactly that, to bring in technology that the factory didn't have, that the Army could say, that's the only place we've got that, and therefore we can't close this place. We're not there yet, but it's a good start. Titanium, lightweight metals, composites, that type of stuff. So it's that type of a thing that we're looking at, to try to make sure that the factory here doesn't close. If you look back at the war, if it hadn't been for Rock Island, they did over 50% of all the up armor that was done on the Humvees. If it hadn't been for them, there wouldn't have been flags that were saved because they got into the business. Industry couldn't do it that fast. Other facilities didn't have the capability. So it's things like that that you need to keep in place over.
If I can make one other observation too. We've been doing this for quite some time. Chairman Bonsack is head of the elected officials, and we, as the electeds, can speak with our people above our pay grade in which the military can't. One of the things that Jim was saying, Jim, you were with TACOM before, right? Originally, okay. He was way high up, retired now, and then of course he's been brought back as a civilian. A lot of the intelligence information we get from people like Jim and others to let us know what's going on so we can effectively communicate to people who we have, because this is not an Iowa or Illinois or Republican or Democrat. This is a jobs, good jobs for the community, both sides of the river. I mean, we have 4 United States senators. One happens to be Dick Durbin, ours, who's number 2 guy in the Senate. Two of them on House Armed Services, one Republican, one Democrat. This is a big deal. And if it wasn't for that island, our economy right now would really be in the toilet. We've always heard about the other parts of the U.S. that are, housing is really down. And for those of you who remember the 80s, we've skated through this thus far pretty well, and a lot of it has to do with the payroll that goes through that island. They have things over there that you just wouldn't believe. However, RAC is used supposedly to reduce cost. It doesn't. It's not for that. That's garbage. Because TACOM, which just moved to Warren, Michigan, Carl Levin, who's a very powerful senator on the Senate Armed Services Committee, spent $350 million of taxpayer money when we could have done it over here at the Arsenal for $35 million. Now he got 1,100 great paying jobs up near Detroit. Now he's got some political muscle. That's the type of things that we have to always sniff out ahead of time. And these are the things that Picatinny's trying to do simultaneous stuff so that when RAC comes around, they say, well, we can do this in Dover, or we can do this down in Huntsville. Okay, close the island. So any of you who have relatives, my dad used to work there. His job, by the way, was moved to Picatinny back in 1979. So I know very well what happens and what I can do. But any of you who have relatives working on the island, or any of you who have any connections, influence, you need to be really attuned to what's going on there. Because we will need your assistance. This is a community effort. Iowa, Illinois, again, Republican, Democrat, we elected officials are doing what we can. But we will need vigilance from all of you in the community. If you hear things, to get with whoever your elected officials so we can, again, communicate. Because that's the only way we're going to be able to make sure that those good paying jobs stay there. And we want, honestly, build more jobs there. That island has a lot more space that we could be putting things on that island. So it's guys like Jim and Chairman Bonsack, some of the others, the mayors, our elected officials above our pay grade, they're helping keep those jobs there. But it's not about saving money, because we've got enough examples where that's just not the case. Well, there's people in contracting down in Huntsville living in trailers. We put them right over here on the island. Instead, they want to put $18 million in a budget down in Huntsville, Alabama to build a brand new facility. That's not saving taxpayers' money, and we're already doing that type of work over here on the island. So these are the type of things we're always working on. Jim, others over there keep telling us what and who we need to contact. But if any of you who have relatives, whatever, and know of anything, please contact whoever it is, your mayor or whoever. So the more information we have, the more we can communicate to try to save the jobs on that island.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, as I understand, Huntsville, we were down there, I believe the figure was 28,000 civilian and military jobs, government jobs, and another 32,000 private sector government-related contracts. Think about that. They grew from 12,000 people to 267,000
60 years.
it's all about the jobs and the money. I think we've said this, we've tried to convince the congressional delegation to scare hell out of Congress when they bring this up. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You don't put all your military assets in one place. That's why the arsenal's here originally, was out in Harper's Ferry. But that's the way, I think, the way to fight that. But our congressmen have got to constantly raise that issue. Think about it. One sort of explosion or something down there, terrorist thing, wipe out our whole military almost, or a good portion of it, right?
All the missiles that send people up into space.
Incredible.
Huntsville, Alabama.
Basic. You gotta spread it around. You can't
The
concentrate in one.
Army has all their aviation and missile stuff,
Yeah.
and then,
Mind-boggling.
NASA has a big facility there also, so it's two major facilities, and then you got a lot of contractors around.
So that's the thing to keep emphasizing, in my judgment, to our congressmen and senators. These jobs aren't gonna go away. They're gonna be done somewhere. They're gonna be done in Quad Cities, they're gonna be done in Alabama. And a lot, in my judgment, a lot of those military types, they like that South. They're all out of the South. And they like Alabama, and they like Georgia. They don't necessarily care much for the Quad Cities, kind of cold. I mean, when you cut through all the nonsense, there's that part of it too. So it's really a political fight. The
But
mayor said.
I must say, like, Mayor Fotis said, we get extremely good cooperation by the delegation. Whether it's the Senate, the House, Republican, Democrat, they all sign up for stuff, and they work very well together. We get great support.
Next thing, we need to get the commander-in-chief there, because he was a senator and I was a mayor when we had RAC 05. So he knows it, he's been there before, but that's what we need next.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out that all 5 of bi-states counties certainly have citizens who work on the island. We've done the demographics of it, and that's why maintaining the island and other large industries in our bi-state region is part of our comprehensive economic development strategy, which you adopted last month. And certainly the arsenal is one of the #1 things in that document. And in fact, you know that there are other counties, including Clinton and Whiteside, that also travel to the island all around our region. And then lastly, Jimmy, I believe that the Arsenal civilian who administers or manages the island, Joel Himsel, has stated that he's been told by First Army officials that they are very pleased with the facilities they've been provided, and the offices that they've been provided on the island, existing buildings, not built buildings. They're extremely pleased with the quality, and they're very, very happy with their office space.
And the military feels welcome here too. That's the other thing. You see somebody at a Walmart or wherever in a civilian, in a military outfit, chances are they will come out. You're gonna see more and more of those. So as long as we continue to be friendly, they like that, and they know this, and they make comments to all of us.
I was in a facility down in Atlanta. This is probably 10 times better than what they had before. It's a great facility.
Okay, well, thanks, Jim. Okay, it's getting late, and next time on the agenda is questions and comments from commissioners. Any more questions, any other business thing for the commission? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Have a good evening.
So what do you use
Good job.
So I went back.
Good report.
Okay.
That was last month?
Yeah, we all.
Danny?
Another big one.
Oh, we have
What's going on right now?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, if you got a guy that likes to pumpkin, so he can talk. You got a guy that likes shelter, so he can talk. You don't have anybody that can talk about anything. You know, or anything that's
That's what he said.
So I was, so it's information.
Oh, you can do whatever you want. So you can only come for a little bit, or if you don't want to. But dinner is more important.
Good luck.
That's what we'd like to see all the elected officials. Frankly, only about half of them.